This is a special edition of Late Night Health. I'm Mark Alyn. We're going to go to Buffalo, New York. We're going to spend some time with Carl Contino, and I hope I got that right. He is the founder of Untapped Genius. Carl, you've had some issues throughout your life. ADD, you stuttered. To me, by the way, everybody today has ADD because we are so bombarded with advertising. You know, if you go into this is really strange, but I went to a men's room, and over the urinal is a little monitor that comes on and sells you stuff while you're peeing, right? We cannot hide from media. We cannot hide from being, as I said, bombarded. So I think everybody has a little bit of ADD. Any thoughts on that?
Oh boy, I couldn't agree more with today's profusion of information. And, I used to think it was such a wonderful thing to have access to the world, but I didn't understand that there's a paradox with it, that now that I have access, I often find myself completely overwhelmed, not only by the media, but just the access to all the information that I like to get my hands into. So yeah, and so in the face of that, and being somebody who was born with some very interesting cognitive issues, as you were mentioning, now, just so you know, I don't like necessarily subscribing to particular labels, but it will at least describe some of the stuff going on in my head. Since I was a little boy, I maybe it was set up because I was born premature and I had breathing issues in the beginning. I don't know, but it definitely set the stage for some interesting games at play when it comes to my mind.
Does everybody have, I hear, my wife said to me the other day, she said, you only live with me part of the day. I live with me all of the day. Right? And so if there's craziness that's driving me nuts about my wife, and she said, I'm living with that all the time. You're not. It was an interesting statement. Can you relate to that?
I can. I like to make the distinction between there's what's happening out in the world, maybe what's happening with my body, my current circumstances, my life, and then there's how my mind perceives it, and therefore ultimately how I respond. Making that clear distinction and making it a daily practice for me to check in with myself enables me to get outside, my default reaction to things. And I've got a lot. We all have a lot going on in our minds. Interpreting, labeling, judging, trying to explain all the things going on, right? And we tend to get caught up in those interpretations and perceptions. And so the game at play for me is to watch my mind like a movie. I love that distinction. It's a very, very simple one, but it does something profound. It separates me from my mind. And as I watch it like a movie, as an observer, I can detach at least a little bit for the moment of all the things going on. And by detaching and observing, I have found it the best way to then free myself, at least for the moment, of whatever is going on in our heads.
You have taken your situations, I'm not going to call them problems. You've overcome them. And on top of that, you're now teaching, and you have been for 20 years or so, teaching people how to get on with their lives, how to get out of it. When I was looking at your material, this is a way, the Untapped Genius is a way of getting out of your own way.
Yeah, the essential game at play. Yes. And I used to think I was the only one. And it turns out even the most capable, brilliant of us, we get it in our own way. And here's a key thing, even if we know it, can you see it in the moment is a key question.
Right.
There are all sorts of invisible assumptions and choices and decisions we've made in the past about the nature of whatever in life. And by default, we're going to go based on those decisions, choices, and assumptions. And so for me to tap myself, my mind, from time to time, say, well, let me take a look at this. Let me hold on loosely to what I believe to be true right now so that I can be more flexible and dynamic with what's actually going on. Having a nimble, flexible mind to me is one of our superpowers once we recognize it and hone the skill and the art of being able to step outside the effects of one's own mind.
People at a young age often come up with what they want to do with their lives. You know, young kids want to be firemen, fire people, police people, cowboys and cowgirls. And then as we get into maybe elementary school and junior high, what we used to call junior high, middle school, and even high school, we decide we want to do something. And we try to reach that goal. And at the same time, we know that, especially for men, that what we do is how we self-describe. Now, you've always wanted to be a musician. You've got drums there, all kinds of them. And you're going to play for us in a little bit. I wrote that note. You're a jazz percussionist and guitar, if I'm not mistaken. What happens if we don't reach that goal?
I have witnessed not only with myself, but probably thousands of others who, for example, went to Los Angeles, where I went to music school, 2 of them there, one in Philadelphia. And I saw the folks who wanted to be that famous rock musician or, becoming a star on TV or in the movies, right? And I thought to myself, it's like, out of 1,000 people, how many actually get there? Maybe 1 out of 1,000?
Maybe.
What happens to the other 999? And I have experienced what it's like to walk around in absolute hopelessness, like a walking shell of myself, having had pursued with all my heart and soul to achieve what I'm here to achieve, and to be knocked down over and over and over again. The impact of it is profound. But there is another side to it, though. If we can get through that devastation and then move forward and turn it into something beautiful, get clear on how can I live my passion, or what different ways might it look like? Being flexible and creative are fundamental as far as I'm concerned.
It's interesting. Being in radio and television, sometimes film, I am available, folks. Self-plug is okay. If you want to plug, Carl, go ahead. You get the education for music. You do all that, but you have to, I guess, your roadmap may change, right?
Yes.
And as you're going toward that goal, you're going toward a city, you're going to New York City. And on the way to New York, you end up in Buffalo or Philadelphia, hopefully not Florida. Sorry, Floridians. But how do you're still going toward that goal, but
things are coming up.
Yeah.
Things are coming up. As a matter of fact, I just went on my first vacation, first time in 4.5 years, with my 2 puppies. I've got 2 English cream golden retrievers, Bodhisattva and Mama Rose, and I'm training them to be service dogs. So I thought, you know what? It's time to get out and, let's do a little test. So we drove from Buffalo all the way down to Florida. And
Ah,
we went to Disney World, we went to Miami Beach, we went to Key West, and just to be
come
able
on,
to
you hit
enter.
South Beach, didn't you?
Yes, I most certainly did. Where my two puppies were asked to be mascots for the Ritz Carlton of all things.
Oh, that's cool.
Interesting side note. But getting out was very important for me. It was actually crucial that I just get away from all my work, get all away from all the familiarity of my daily living, and go on an adventure. Now, that adventure, when I took off, it was not smooth. It was not easy. Things came up, including in the midst of 60, 70 mile per hour winds. I'm driving down the 75, 85 miles per hour. There's 2 lanes. And lo and behold, 100 yards in front of me, a tree all of a sudden
Whoa.
crashes right in front of me. And I had just a moment to swerve to the left lane and get around. A couple hours later, I almost ran into a car that was in a ditch, but the fender was hanging over the road. I mean, all sorts of different things happen. And problems, issues, the unexpected is to be expected, right? And in every case, I had to be able to respond in the moment and solve some very real problems along
It
the way.
saved your life.
That
And
the
the
ability to
pups.
respond to the moment is everything. And yes, it did and has.
There's an old saying, you know, God, Jesus, spirit, whatever you want to call a higher power, only throws out at you what you can handle. I hate that, by the way. Can you respond?
Yeah, I have been through some interesting challenges in my life. I was referring to my cognitive issues, which had a devastating impact on my life. I was also born with a high level of fear and volatility. People scared me. I couldn't find the words and still struggled with it until I was about 3 years old. And then people couldn't talk to me until I was about 8 or 9. And I don't remember this, but my cousin was telling me, Carl, you used to go run and hide in a corner. You couldn't talk to you. That's how afraid of the world I was. And yet I had a huge amount of passion. First of all, my first dream, I might be dating myself a little bit here, but I wanted to be the next $6 million man.
Aha.
Steve Austin, who crashed, he was an astronaut. He crashed and, they didn't give him any chance to live, but they rebuilt him and he had a bionic eye. He could see a mile away. He had bionic legs and he could run like a cheetah. I mean, every Friday night eating Bocce's Pizza, a famous place here in Buffalo, 3 feet in front of the TV, I was dreaming of being that $6 million man. Little did I know that I would have unforeseen major obstacles. Again, the cognitive stuff, speech, stammering, trying to find words, memory issues. There are certain types of memory like facial recognition that just simply don't work for me. Dyslexia. But here's the most devastating thing for me personally. My number one passion, as you had mentioned, was music. First, it was jazz guitar. And again, I might be dating myself a little bit here, but I wanted to be the next George Benson.
Okay.
He had a rhythm and groove and feel like none other. So I ended up dedicating 10, 15 years at least to music, 3 different music schools. I had over 40 teachers. I practiced 10 to 12 hours every day. But here's the crazy thing. I actually got worse. Because it turns out that one of my cognitive issues, which is, I call it many things, but I call it a flow stutter, where I go to express myself, but it's like there's a trigger happy part of my mind. I call it the controller that taps on the brakes, and it also tries to grab onto the wheel too tight and do the doing. And in music, or talking, or connecting with another, or just doing my day to day, that is not the most efficient, pleasant way of doing things. All right. So I recognize there's a stutter that was built in me that was showing up through my music, and I couldn't change it no matter what I did. And on top of that, I've had some interesting physical issues. 8 years ago, I was doing my favorite thing at the time was skiing. And it was the last run of the day. And I decided to go for it. So I
How are
went,
your knees?
oh, well, no, my knees are the least of my problems here.
Oh, yeah.
Challenges, issues. I ended up hitting a jump at 40 miles per hour the wrong way. I ended up 25 feet in the air unexpectedly, and I fell backwards onto a sheet of ice. And so I
Ooh.
ended up breaking 8 ribs, my shoulder, I punctured my lung, and I shattered my hip in 9 different places. And at the time, of course, I was devastated. I was panicking. I was full of fear. It's like, oh my gosh, because I couldn't breathe. And my leg was locked into my chest and I couldn't straighten it out. All right. Long story short, I heard an inner voice in me at one point, waiting for the helicopter to pick me up, take me to the hospital. I said, Coach Carl, reframe this. Now, there's what is, and then the perception of, right? Now, in the midst of it, I'm tuned into the fear of it all and the panic, like what's going on here. But I heard that little voice and said, all right, let's reframe it. And I turn even the most serious things into a game because I think that's when we can be at our best, even with most serious things, right? So I asked myself 3 questions with any situation. What's the opportunity here?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do with this? And the craziest one of all is, what do I actually like about this situation? So there I am trying to ask myself these questions in the middle of this accident. And I thought to myself, what, are you kidding me? What's the opportunity? What can I do with it? What do I like about it? Nothing. Are you kidding? But then I hear going through the sky. So, oh, that must be the helicopter for me. And I had my first reframed positive thought, if you will. Wow, I've always wanted to go on a helicopter ride. There you go. And that is what I call being into the yes of whatever's going on, no matter how horrible. If I fight it, if I panic, I'm not at my best. But if I can find some way to work with the situation sooner than later, hopefully, then I've found that it turns into beautiful things. So when I was in the helicopter, my second reframe was, thank God there are people like these paramedics trained to take care of people like me. And it continued while I was at the hospital and whatnot. And then it eventually led to over 2,136 days in a row, without exception, of what I call doing my DCOM, daily celebration of movement, not exercise. I let go of exercise, instead made it a game. I made it about movement, dance, singing, and even while lifting weights, I would do it to the rhythm of the music. There was no discipline needed. I was propelled forward because I was grateful to be alive, and just to be able to move my body was everything. So that gives you an example of some of the cognitive issues I've had, physical problems. And at its worst, to be quite honest, I like being open with people just so they know really what I've experienced. At one point, I ended up at just about the lowest point you could ever get to, homeless, living in my van, and addicted, and a couple of times contemplating ending it all. So that just gives a little idea of the impact that some of these challenges have had. But my grandmother told me, my Italian grandmother, who lived in 97, my grandpa lived 103. They must have been doing something right, right? She says, Carl, first of all, if you got your health, you got everything. But number 2, where there's a will, there's truly always a way. Not just as a pretty notion, but now I live that notion to the best of my ability. And part of the game is to find the freedom within the constraints, find the possibilities within the limits, if you will.
Do you take your life experience, extrapolate it to others, and say, if I can do it,
that's it.
I can
That's
show
my
you
message.
how you can do it.
That is my message. Yes.
And you've been doing this for over 20 years.
Longer than that, yes.
Longer than
that.
that.
And with folks from all walks of life. I've worked with the homeless. I've worked with kids, teens, young adults. I've worked with entrepreneurs, creatives of all stripes, from cinematographers to musicians to poets, entrepreneurs, the mega successful even. But we all have one thing in common, I found, what we were referencing earlier. In some ways, we all get in our own way.
As we age, as we contemplate our lives, and if we're middle-aged and you're looking, my neighbor is moving rocks right now, if you can hear that. The fact is that maybe you don't have as long to go as you've had already. Mm-hmm. And you want that to be better. You want something different. So the actual thought here is, are we meant to live happy lives, or are we supposed to suffer? I mean, you certainly suffered physically and mentally.
The beautiful gift within that is that I have often been able to experience, and acting as a catalyst for others to move through their challenges. It's, how can I create the life that I want to experience? Not in spite of the things that get in the way, but because of. And a huge source of inspiration for me is nature. So, nature seems to do an amazing job at dealing with its challenges and creating new growth from it. If you think about a forest fire that clears the old growth so that new growth can emerge.
Yeah, some trees need that fire to be able to grow.
That's right. And it's built into nature. It's like, if you even take a look at a plant, what's it grown in? Dirt, which is a bunch of rotten decay and a bunch of crap, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
But provide the right environment, and that crap turns into fuel for new growth. And that plant depends on it. So this is not just a pretty notion. We can talk all day about nice thoughts, but for me, a key distinction here is, how do we close the gap between what we know? Because there's all sorts of amazing personal growth distinctions, folks out there, seminars, books, you name it. I've read them all, hundreds and hundreds, yet they didn't help me transform. And I think one of the key challenges is the difference between what I have learned and logically know, and closing the gap to being able to experience those things in real time in my everyday, moment to moment.
You mentioned that you've worked with mega wealthy people. Some people say money is the root of all evil. Smite me with it. I don't believe that money is the root of all evil, but even those who have tons and tons of money and don't worry about things that the average person does, the price of $6.50 gas per gallon, right. Working at minimum wage and having to pay that much more money for gas. Money doesn't solve those problems, does it? It's still a mindset on how you live.
You said it right there. Mindset is everything. It's 100% of the game as far as I'm concerned. Great example is for several years now, I've worked with a multi-Emmy winning documentary filmmaker, extremely talented, does amazing work sharing stories of amazing people in this world that you would never hear of. So he had all the trimmings of success, and yet he was I will just say, he was as miserable as one can get. Mm-hmm. Two key things at play. Number one, first of all, we've never been given the owner's manual to our mind. Now, we've been taught from society that, hey, once you have X, Y, and Z, you're going to be happier. You're golden at that point. Well, now what happens if you do have everything you think you need to be happy, but you're not only that, but you find yourself kind of miserable, still worried, doubtful, full of fear, anxiety, as he was experiencing. So yes, that mindset is everything. Now, I have been homeless. I have been penniless how many times? I have almost lost my life probably half a dozen times. I've been through some interesting stuff. And yet, I am now able to find and help others find what we call happiness just in the moment. Not overall statement. Am I happy and successful? Well, that's a general statement. I'm talking about how am I doing right now? And I look into my state of mind to determine how am I doing right now? Am I able to work with all the concerns and doubts and challenges of my life? Or am I still finding my mind? I call it the slippery mind, whose only job is to keep us safe. Very powerful. It's the explainer, the judger, the labeler. Very powerful with only one mandate. How can I survive? But it's not very smart. But yet it gets triggered. All of a sudden you've got success to the slippery mind. It's like, uh-oh, now we're going to be seen. Oh, now what if I run out of that $1 million I just made on that launch or whatever? That's how it thinks.
Right.
It operates on a specific channel. And that's how, and the key thing is I've learned to approach my mind like a radio, where I've learned to change the channel from the crap channel to the clear channel, where my cognitive issues don't exist, my doubts and fears and worries in my past don't exist. I'm now tuned into the clear, high definition channel where I can think more clearly. Because my number one complaint to my dad, the doctor, for 52 years, was I can't think straight. I'm in a fog. And he didn't know how to help me. He would have me see the doctors, and I took these brain supplements called nootropics. I read all the books. And again, I couldn't wake up my mind. So when I am able to think clearly, it is noteworthy. So at that clear channel, and I make it a game, go for what channel am I tuned into? Oh, I see that doubt. I see that fear. I feel it in my body right now. I'm kind of crunched. My energy's low. Okay, great. Now let's entice the mind to change that channel. And when I do, I can tell. It's all about feedback, measurable, tangible results, moment to moment.
That's
self-feedback.
That's self-feedback.
For my body.
Right.
When I know what to look like, as a matter of fact, I have over a dozen different feedback loops that my body is telling me what channel am I tuned into. My drums, I have in front of me at all times because they have turned out to be my number one teacher in a split, literally to 1/100th of a second, based on science I get from electrical engineering, is that it will let you know what channel you're tuned into.
Well, you should be as you know, Carl, you should be tuned to the Late Night Health channel because that's very high def and lots of good information there. We're out of time. I'm going to invite you back, and we're going to get into more of the what to do if you're in that brain fog funk. And we'll do that next time if you remember what the topic is.
Absolutely.
All right. But before we go, you've got, I see several drums. I see some electric drums to your left. I see what look like bongos to me in the front. Can you play something for us just for maybe 20 or 30 seconds as we wrap up?
Sure. Let me know if you can hear it, first of all.
Beautifully.
Nice. Quick little sample impromptu right there.
Hey, listen, I really appreciate your time. I want to give a shout out to Tom Martin for introducing us, one of my favorite people. And Carl, you will come back? I made that a statement, not a question. You noticed that.
Ready anytime.
All right. Hey, that's
love it.
Great.
This was so much fun. Boy, time flies though, huh?
It does. I promised 20 minutes. We've done a half hour.
All right.
Listen, thank you very much for spending some time with us here at Late Night Health. We really appreciate it. If you want information on Carl, we have his website up underneath us right now. And of course, you can find out more by going to latenighthealth.com. We'll have an article, we'll have his pretty picture, and a way to contact him as well. Carl, again, thank you very much. I'm Mark Alyn. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on our next episode.